So we're here with Jackie Anderson and Bez on the Mondays, and basically, Jackie, you're running as a councillor for the Irlam area.
I am, yes.
What made you decide to run as a councillor? What was you unhappy with?
It's the love of the environment. It's very beautiful around here, and there seems to be a lot of development that's been proposed over the past 3 years. So this is probably about my 4th year with campaigning for environmental issues. So I've attempted to be voted in before. But this time things have got more serious. There was a point, the planning application went in 3 years ago for several things like Port Salford and the peat extractions. But we thought in the intervening 3 years that maybe they weren't going to do it because it was running out. I think there was only 3 or 4 months left on the planning application. And then obviously when everything kicked off, I started getting involved again. Plus lots of other things have come up. The peat moss up there, it needs to be properly restored. There's lots of issues for people living in Irlam because of the great difficulty of getting out here, the cost of the transport, even getting the kids into the colleges and the schools. We haven't got any food banks up here. So what I wanted to do really is make sure Irlam had a better quality of life and more facilities, and just do what people want really, to know. I mean, before we were asking local businessmen, what would you want? It was quite interesting to get people's opinions. People are often saying, what are your policies? But first of all, I want to know what other people want and then work those into what we want really.
So you're looking at kind of party politics where it's based on asking people questions as opposed to telling them what they need.
Exactly, yeah, that's exactly. And it's so interesting. We made a survey. We did just a free Google survey, and we got about 500 replies of people telling us what they want. And similarly on the Facebook page, we started a question 2 days ago, and we've had 62 really detailed responses about solar panels, and it's been more educational for me these past few weeks, listening to what people say, we should do this or you should do that, and that's hopefully, you know, we can start putting that into practice for people and knowing what they really want.
So what made you get behind Jackie?
Well, first of all, I was living a permacultural existence. I'd gone off grid, been that way for the last 3 years. And I got the call from Bart and Moss, would I come down and show support? And as I said before, in an early morning rant, I mentioned that I might run for Salford and Eccles. And it's just developed from there. Then Jackie got in touch, we phoned her back, and we went round and had a meeting one evening. Had a late night meeting, it was about 10 o'clock, weren't it, when we actually arrived. Yeah. And Jackie said that she'd be really interested in if we set up a political party, which she was thinking of, because we realised if we was just going to run for Salford and Eccles, even if we did win that, I'd still have no power to stop the fracking, and we need to win the whole of Salford to have any sort of say. So I realised there's no point standing as an independent, because myself on my own is not going to be able to make any change or make any difference. So hence the reality party. And now Jackie's the member. She's well, my favourite member, because she's the only one up to now. But yeah, we're asking for other people if they're interested in getting involved in politics, and for the general election, and we hope to go for the whole of Salford and the country eventually.
You were saying earlier, Jackie, that you've been surprised, you've been inundated.
Yes, with
through
people.
The Facebook page.
Yeah, we put a message out a few days ago again saying anybody interested in standing for local and national elections next year. And we've been inundated, including someone in Brazil.
Someone in Brazil?
Yeah. Someone in Brazil, I think we'll have to go global.
Yeah.
Little difficult campaigning, knocking on doors for Salford and Irlam.
I don't know, you know.
We've had the Japanese as well asking for help as well.
Japanese, well,
yeah.
I mean, one of the major things that you're about is the anti-fracking.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as I said, from my involvement now with you and conversations that we've had, I've been genning myself up a lot more on it, and it's very, very disturbing.
Yes.
How reliable do you really think it is that we're going to be able to stop, or you are going to be able to stop, should I say, the fracking?
Yeah.
And the powers that be seem to be very determined.
I know. I don't know. I'd love to say I feel confident, but I'm more scared than anything else, because I live next to Bart and Moss, and I'm scared for my family and my future and my kids and their health and my local community as well. We have had a success a few years ago with stopping the peat extraction. So we had some help with planning experts helping us in Lancashire Wildlife Trust, and we're starting to get that kind of support. Lancashire Wildlife Trust are putting a lottery bid for a proposal called Carbon Landscapes, where they want to get similar to national park status for the moss. So hopefully that's the information we'll get and the support. There's been a phenomenal amount of support because of things that have been happening in Balcombe. Yesterday I was in touch with the people in Australia. You know, they recently stopped it in Australia, and we've got a planning group where we meet up and we read all the planning documents. So we've got a couple of specialists helping us with that. So after the election in half term, that's my first port of call, is to meet up with them and get all the information from Australia. It was stopped on the basis of proof that there wasn't sufficient community engagement, which is one of the interesting things, because that's been very similar here, because there hasn't been community engagement. You know, meeting up with a few people and sending a few leaflets and putting and adding a local paper is not sufficient for this kind of potential damage, you know, not global environmental damage. That's the key thing. Yeah.
Where can people find out more about fracking in this area, the information?
Well, we have a Facebook group at the minute. I would like to move on to have a website specifically for Irlam and KDZ, because in September, you know, we find out that, well, before that we'll find out if they're coming back in September. The planning application should go in the next month, really. Frack Off, if you just Google Frack Off, there's a national website, and we're all linked into that via a map, so wherever anybody lives, that's the first port of call, is to go to Frack Off. Or BIF, which is Britain Against Frack-Free, something. There's so many of them that start up.
All the GDS people from Against Fracking.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities for people to find out more information about it. I mean, as I said, I watched some stuff about it, and it concerns me. I come from mining stock, so I understand that aspect of it.
Yes.
What alternatives? Because I'm thinking about what people may say to you, especially when you doorstep and you're talking to people about your party.
Yes.
What alternatives are there?
Yes. Well, what they're saying, the unconventional gas, people are saying that because the gas and oil are going to eventually run out, that we need this. But if they start drilling it out, that's only going to last 20 years as well. So it's all going to run out in 20 to 30 years. It's good looking at things like the German model, because they've already retrofitted 70% of their houses where you're producing all of your electricity, you have wells put on your property. That's the model I'd like to further investigate and propose to Salford City Council as a starter. I'd like Salford Council to be the innovative green council of England, to show everybody else the way, and just say, have it frack-free. It has to be frack-free Salford. There was a questionnaire put out to prospective councillors on Friends of the Earth this week, asking, what do you want to do? Do you want a moratorium on fracking? And I said, no, there's no negotiation. It has to be frack-free. There's nothing else. It has to go. It's wrong. The amount of chemicals that are used, in the experience of all the other countries, is there for all the evidence that we need, really. You know, it's a very beautiful area of you know, the northwest, but you know, the idea that it's been called the desolate north, whether it's northwest or northeast, that completely needs to stop.
Yeah.
I'm standing for election on Thursday,
Right.
Party. So
Take back power, change politics for good. Anderson. Yeah.
As other policies, what other policies have you been questioned about? We saw the businessman earlier, as you said.
yes,
What
yeah.
other things are people asking you about?
Well, the idea of food. When a president and I've got a policy of free food. Some people think that doesn't make any sense, but it's to bring the permaculture in, where we're growing our own food. I know not everybody will want to grow their own food, but to start to engage with the land more and grow it. We've got an incredible edible Salford scheme, where I've been trying to price up some raised bed boxes. So it's a community growing scheme. So just to start off with something small like that, and by next year for the elections, to just spread it out all over Salford. But to other things that we can do, there's so many, you know, options to, like food banks. We shouldn't be having food banks, you know. We shouldn't be having anybody that's homeless. People are having bedroom sanctions. We need to address it, and urgently. There shouldn't be anybody homeless. There's plenty of empty buildings out there that could be used as a matter of urgency. Every single warehouse and empty building out there needs to be opened up and something done. I mean, I'd be looking at this as an emergency within the next 12 months, you know, and just to stop. You know.
And there's the National Health Service as well, because that's been deliberately broken down for sale. And like in Salford, where was it, Lower Broughton, they've built a brand new centre spent millions on building this centre, and now they're closing it down. We're speaking to people who are out trying to save their local health centre, and we've paid for that centre to be built. A brand new centre what's being built, what's now being closed down, what a waste of money. And the only people who are going to benefit from that building being built, which the taxpayers are paying for, which is us, are the corporate businesses who are going to come up and buy all the old buildings from the NHS at knockdown prices to give us a privatised health industry, which we don't, nobody wants. Our grandparents' parents have built the NHS from the World War II. It's one of our greatest assets, and it's admired around the world, and we don't want it privatised. So one of the efforts going to be put in is to saving the NHS and the health service also.
What about housing? Because obviously we're all aware of the housing crisis.
Yes.
And the mortgage increase of prices because of the systems that have been introduced.
Yes.
And you know the difference between London and the rest of the country. What are your thoughts on housing?
Well, we definitely need more social housing. I know there's the belief that when you get private developers building housing schemes, 20% of it should be for social housing. That doesn't happen. You know, it's very rare that we put aside for social housing. To try and get money from other sources, somebody's asked me where you're going to get your money from. Well, first of all, we're going to address making sure that people are paying their taxes, and even if we can only do it just in Salford to make sure, you know, that we're getting money back from other sources, and just let's get it into housing, even if it's the cheapest housing. I've been seeing some houses made from containers, some really nice little housing units, just for the homeless, and then just bring back housing generally. And just to stop the bedroom tax, really, what we're going to get is a shortage of one-bedroom housing and a glut of three-bedroom houses that are going to be empty. And the worry is what will be happening with developers and those empty houses and the land. It just needs to stop. You know,
so the reality party, I mean, obviously with Bez being involved in the greatest respect, at first people have seen it as Bez and may not have taken it seriously, and the policies seriously.
Yes.
What you're saying is these are real policies, and it's a real party.
Well, we are a real party. We're registered now, so there's no denying it. And like I say, in the future is I'd like to see the end of the banking system myself, you know what I mean? Because I envision a society where every member of the society is valued, and money's not needed, because you don't really need money for society to work. You just need people. And if every person in the country put a few hours, even 3 hours of the time, one day a week, in a city like Salford, I don't know how many people are in Salford now.
214,000, I think.
Well, you can add up the hours. I'm not very good, but you can imagine the man hours you got and not pay, and we can build great services, great community, and become great assets without the need for money. You know what I mean? So it's people power, really. And
real people as well. That's what attracts me about the name as well. Because one of the things about being a politician is I didn't want to lose who I am. I wanted to remain me, as real as I am, and not to become politicised, and to keep that core wholeness about myself and that belief in people and that integrity, and keep my ideals, really. And obviously to have practical ways. I mean, that's every single thing that I've looked at in my ideas. I've found a practical solution before I started going out with evidence similar to the Freiburg retrofitting of the houses, to make sure that was something that was doable. You know, I don't know if you've seen about the roads, the solar roads, or the kinetic bricks, and put these kinetic bricks in the pavements in the shopping centres and in your homes, so they're picking up the energy as movement goes past them. There's loads of different things you can do.
So you're talking about practical advancements,
Yes.
scientific advancements and progress.
Yeah.
And another thing as well, whilst we're still living in the banking system, what we need to do is make sure all the corporates pay the taxes what they owe, because you hear these stories where mostly American companies pay no corporate tax whatsoever to this country, yet they're happy to take all the money out of it. So we need to address that problem as well. For instance, I've heard Google 20 billion on a worldwide basis. So imagine if you just got Google to pay the taxes what they owe. You know what I mean? That would be a great impact to the society and the place we live.
Hello.
We'll do a cut out there. I'll ask one more question, then we're done. That's not going to decide what it is yet. I never like scripting things, I just like to think it through. So, your general person in the street who may look at the reality party and go, oh, I'm not sure.
Yes.
Although they like some of the things that you say. Because, for an example, my partner, I've discussed it with her, and she said there's some really, and she's seen a lot of the footage we've made. I'm very interested and gone, that's great, but some of these things sound a bit too extreme, yeah. Without, you've got to find a middle ground, I suppose, at some point. And do you think that people will accept you more if you find a middle ground, or can you find a middle ground? Because
well, at the moment there's no middle ground to be found at the minute, because for me it's about stopping the fracking, and the reason why the party's been formed in the first place is to be a voice against the fracking, and people don't want to vote the Greens no more. They've been around long enough. They've not made much difference in the time they have been here. So it's a time for a new party to come along. We can and hopefully gather support. And where what I look for the support is with the young people, you know what I mean? Because they're the future of this country. And we can get the young people to take interest in politics and make proper change. Because it does sound extreme to people who've lived their lives that way all their lives and been socially conditioned to behave and to accept the system what they live in. And yeah, I understand why it does sound extreme. And there could be a middle ground, but at the end of the day, as far as I'm concerned, we need to stop the frackings, and they talk about shared responsibility and of the debt what's being created by the bankers. Yet the bankers don't take any of the responsibility, and that is another. And to me, I don't think we should be gentle with it. Why should we find some middle ground for the bankers to survive and carry on doing as they're doing? I don't think it's the right way forward. So these problems need addressing, and we need addressing quickly rather than late, because if we don't, like I say, the things that are happening is we won't have any, we've got no more legal aid anymore. The NHS is closing down. You're going to be fracked, so if you want to take the fracking companies to court because your house value's gone down, your kids are getting ill, or there's been a spillage outside and it caused damage to your property, or whatever they may have done, you cannot take them to court because you've got no legal aid. Yeah. Now they're showing no middle ground to us. You know, the bankers again, you know what I mean, they take no responsibility for the problem they cause for us, you know what I mean. They're showing no middle ground, are they, you know what I mean. So in a way, I don't think, I understand people where they want more gentler views, but we've been treated so extremely ourselves. We need to hit back with extreme politics.